Hello, 7th grade. I am Mr. Rogers,
And I'm Mrs. Froman.
and you are watching the video lecture for 2-2 in your book, and this is on respiration, another one of those cell processes that all cells do, and it's kind of more what's happening inside the cell. So respiration is how cells release energy.
All right, so respiration is actually when the cells break down food, such as glucose, and they release the energy that they contain.
So when I think respiration, I think of someone breathing.
I know, I think of that too. Yeah.
So it's really more, it's in the cell, so I give a
Yeah,
picture, so it's actually happening.
Yeah, it's what's happening in the cell, and the reason
Okay.
it has to have oxygen for that to happen. So that's why breathing kind of comes into the whole
Respiration part of it?
thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a cell process. So it happens in the cells. It's not just me taking a breath. Okay.
Right.
So where does it start? It starts in the cytoplasm. So in the cytoplasm, inside the cell membrane, that glucose, that sugar molecule that you've eaten, is broken down into smaller molecules. And this releases a little bit of energy. It's kind of the first step. It releases a small amount of energy, but the big stuff is yet to come. And here's that glucose molecule, that one sugar molecule. That's all the atoms in just one, right?
That's a big one. Yeah.
That's a big one, and really,
Lots of stuff.
relatively speaking, it's actually quite small, but it seems big
Looks big there.
when you're first learning about them.
The second step is those pieces that get broken apart in the cytoplasm move into the mitochondria, which, as we remember, is the energy powerhouse for that cell. So those smaller molecules get broken down even more, and it has to have oxygen for that to happen. And this is where the bulk of that energy is being released, and it's in the form of that, see that little ATP there, a little star, that's ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Lots and lots of energy in that little guy.
Yeah. ATP. So that's more the Krebs cycle, which you learned more about in high school. But the
Yeah.
big thing you have to know is mitochondria. This is where it all happens. Now, and your cell doesn't have just one. It's probably got hundreds of these mitochondria. And depending on the type of cell, like your muscle cells probably have thousands, because that's what they do, is they just are using energy,
Got to use that energy.
working for you. So, again, respiration happens in your cells, and most of it happens in that mighty mitochondria. So what happens then, after the cell breaks through those molecules, the energy is released in the ATP, we have those byproducts. We know there's waste that comes out. And carbon dioxide is one of the big waste products, and also water. Diffuses out of the cell and then gets breathed out through the lungs. So think about on a cold winter's day when you take an exhale and you can see your breath. A lot of that's carbon dioxide in water and some other gases, but you can actually see that water vapor.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can breathe it on a window and draw
That's
a
right.
picture in it.
So there's a CO2 molecule, and we put the picture of the dog because when they pant, you can definitely feel the hot breath and all that water vapor coming on you there. So this looks complicated there, Mrs. Froman. I'll let you talk about this one here.
Looks a little familiar.
It does.
We're starting out with a C6H12O6, which I think was that glucose molecule. And then we have 6 oxygen molecules. And that's going to...
That arrow, what does that arrow mean?
I think that arrow is what's happening inside the cell.
Inside the mitochondria, that's where
that's
what's happening?
mitochondria
Okay.
getting all broken apart and reconfigured, so we end up with our 6 carbon dioxides, which we're going to breathe out, our 6 water molecules that we're also going to get rid of, but then we've got the energy. The energy is what our cells really want.
That's what they want.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are like we call byproducts the most, like waste, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So, like we said, it looks familiar. So we can say that photosynthesis and respiration are opposite processes. So we have respiration, and the raw materials, that's on this side of the arrow, is the glucose and the oxygen. And that's actually the products of photosynthesis. So that's what photosynthesis makes, is oxygen and glucose. And so then for respiration, we take those in, we eat the food, we breathe in the oxygen, and then we produce the CO2 and the H2O, and that's what the plant needs to carry out photosynthesis. So our waste products are what the raw materials for photosynthesis. So it's kind of those opposites. Our raw materials are their byproducts there. And so they're opposites. It's kind of weird how that happened. It worked out just like that, where one's products, maybe there's a little more going on as far as evolutionary terms and how that actually worked out to be that nice. So I know it's complicated. I would definitely put this in your notes, how photosynthesis and respiration are opposite processes. So take a minute, the idea that one's products are the other one's byproducts, like waste products. And what we did, there's that giant molecule again. So you can kind of try to visualize this happening inside of a cell. Here's this one sugar molecule, and obviously you eat, there's going to be millions of these molecules going into the cell all the time, being broken apart. But also there's that O2. Oxygen, anytime you take a breath, you don't breathe in just one oxygen atom. They're always paired together. It's O2 is what we breathe in. That's in our atmosphere around us. So we take in those 6 CO2, or 6 O2, CO2. I'm jumping into myself there. The 6 O2, that one giant sugar molecule. And then what comes out here, we have our Mickey Mouse looking guys, which are water molecules, H2O, and there's 6 of those. And there's that 6 CO2, and that's what we breathe out. And the other big thing I guess we should have in there is kind of the energy, like a lightning bolt or that ATP explosion for all the energy that's being produced. And so there's one more thing that some cells do, kind of a type of respiration. It's all about getting energy is the biggest thing. And our cells do it to a certain extent. I'll let Mrs. Froman talk about that one here next.
Yes, fermentation. So this is the way cells get energy that they don't have to use oxygen. So it happens, we see it a lot in like unicellular organisms, like yeast is the big one.
Okay.
Like when it makes the bread rise. So they actually get their energy without using the oxygen, but it's not as much energy as when you use the oxygen.
So it's not as efficient, right?
Not as efficient, no.
There's some yeast. Looks like it's working right there. The gas bubbles, all those CO2 bubbles. And so some examples of fermentation. I think you mentioned there the yeast. And they carry out a type of fermentation called alcoholic fermentation. So it makes that bread rise. That tiny CO2 bubbles, that's what makes bread nice and flaky there. So that CO2 is a byproducts. But also inside of us, if you've ever been kind of that point where you're out running around and you get so tired your muscles are getting sore, well, your muscles after a while, it means you can't pull in oxygen fast enough to carry out respiration. Your muscles will carry out what's called lactic acid fermentation. And it builds up in the muscles when you're burning, you need so much energy oxygen can't keep up. So it's faster and can be replaced. So think about that hard workout after a sport, practice, soccer, football, whatever it might be. Your muscles are sore. It's that lactic acid kind of sitting in your muscles. That's what's doing it. So I got one question though. Do plant cells carry out respiration?
They actually do.
Okay.
But not to the same extent we do.
We obviously move around a lot more, so yeah, plants don't move quite like we do.
Yeah, so they use a little bit of their sugars for their cellular respiration.
All right.
But
by and large, it's the animals that do it.
The most of it, yeah.
Okay. All right, so 7th grade, we are going to stop there. We thank you guys for watching. Bye, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.